Today, Jono and myself, Dylan, are going to walk you through some of our key tips to improve your running form. Before we get to these tips, it's important to know that there's no such thing as one perfect style of running. Some runners run well with a long stride, others with a short stride. Some runners have a high back kick, others have a low back kick. Some runners even present a unique characteristic that might look wrong but works perfectly fine. But with all this being said, we still have some general principles that almost any runner can apply to improve their running form. So let's go through these principles starting from the ground up.
Many runners pay a lot of attention as to where they land on their foot, whether it be the forefoot, the midfoot, or the heel. However, a lot of what happens at our feet is actually determined by what happens higher up in our body. We'll discuss this more later on. Regardless of where you land on your foot, it is important to try and make use of as much of your foot as possible, as this enables us to utilize the elastic potential of the foot and distribute the load. If you're a forefoot striker, this means that when your toes strike the ground, you want to allow your heel to drop slightly before pushing off again. If you're a heel striker, you want to avoid bringing your forefoot crash into the ground, but rather move your foot more like a wheel and roll it forward.
When it comes to the shin, we consider what's called the Shank Angle, which is the direction your shin faces upon landing. What we're looking for is for the shin to be facing vertically or leaning slightly forward upon landing. If your shin is facing backwards, we're creating what's called a braking force and not transferring your force optimally in the forward direction. Landing beneath our torso while we run creates this forward-facing shank angle that we're after, while overstriding creates this backward-facing shank angle that we're trying to avoid.
When it comes to our knees, we're looking for a bend of around 15 degrees. If we don't bend our knees enough, we lose shock absorption. But if we bend our knees too much, we lose vertical height, and this needs to be overcome with a more bouncy and thus inefficient stride. When it comes to our hips, we want to keep our hips stable and avoid a collapse of our hips on our unsupported leg during our stride. A problem that many runners have is that they sit back in their stride and allow their hips to drop, which makes it very difficult to use our glutes to their full potential. We want to focus on pushing our hips forward and upwards, which gives our glutes and other muscles a much better chance of functioning efficiently.
When it comes to the spine, the key point here to consider is maintaining a neutral position. One where your lumbar spine isn't overly arched and one where you're not hunched over either. A simple and easy cue to remember is to run tall. This will help ensure that neutral spinal position.
The back and forth motion of our arms is facilitated by a twisting of the thoracic spine. What this means is that as we pump our arms, there should be a slight movement in our shoulders while our pelvis should remain fairly stable. Our chest will turn slightly, but we want our arms to avoid crossing this midline of the body. In terms of our shoulders, we want to avoid having them tense and raised, focus on keeping them as relaxed and low down as possible.
The last area of our body to pay attention to is, of course, our head. We want to ensure that our head is squared, meaning that our ears are directly above our shoulders rather than in front or behind of them. We also want to ensure that our head is not tilted backward or forward, but rather level, so that our eye line is facing about 20 meters in front of us.
So that's quite a lot of info, and it's difficult to make too many changes to your stride in one go. What we recommend is to find areas where you may struggle with your running form and think about how you can apply these tips to those specific areas. Your running form is something that's been molded over thousands of hours of training, so it's certainly not going to change overnight. Look at making small and gradual adjustments to your form and avoid trying to change too many aspects at one time. There's a whole lot more that we could talk about with regards to running form, but we'll be sure to come back to this at a later stage. Hopefully this video has given you a bit of insight into running form and has provided you with a few key points that you can take home. Thanks for watching.